Hey everyone, it's Root Beer here with the perpetually late weekly roundups. So yeah, I was kind of expecting them to release Willista earlier in the week like they did with Laurel Nerl on a Wednesday, but instead the week just kept going on and on with no reveal until they finally came out with her on Monday. So yeah, this video's super late, and because we already know what all of the ride lines do, I think instead of going through card by card, I'm gonna round up all of the ride lines and kind of the first impressions I have for each of them. We will probably still do an actual set review once that comes around, just because easy content, and you'll get to hear everyone else's opinions on these cards, but for now, just gonna kind of round up the ride line, maybe spotlight a card or two, and kind of go from there, okay? So first up, we have Kairi from the TD. So her ride line lets her bring back something, grade 1 or less from drop zone on the grade 1, and then the grade 2 bounces on attack, and then Kairi herself can Soul Blast 1 to bounce 2 things, and then if you Persona Road, you can call 2 things into the same column. So Kairi seems generally pretty decent. The deck has a whole lot of on-play skills to give you big, huge numbers. You also have the Whale Order that gives you a lot of extra power consistently throughout the turn. And then once you have the Persona Ride going, you also have multi-attacking unlocked. In addition to that, you have the grade 2 double R Ellis that also calls a thing to an open rearguard circle, so even if you miss the Persona Ride, you should still be able to make a column or an extra attack with Ellis. The main problem I'm having with Kairi right now is just a conspicuous lack of rear guards that return themselves to the hand, or even other units, so like a grade 1 that after it boosts returns the unit in front of it to hand or something, to enable Ellis to have open rearguard circles more, or at the end of turn to have rearguard circles open after you call something back with Ellis, let's say, so that you can have your board cleared out against control decks and also gain the benefit of that grade 1 that gains extra shield. So Kairi seems decent overall, it's just my major criticism is lacking any rear guards that return to hand at the moment. So hopefully that's something that comes up in the remaining reveals we have for the set. So next up we have Celestial with her wings gimmick, so based on the grade of the card in your bind zone. Celestial is looking very gimmicky and not amazing. One good thing that she got was Downpouring Singer Elkiel, which is her other triple R for the set. So when that is bound, both wings become active during your turn, or until the end of your opponent's next turn, actually. So it means on your turn, you can get tons of offensive power with the 5k and the crit on Celestial herself, as well as the minus 5k to your opponent's units. It also means that with Elemuel, the grade 1 that gives things crits, you can effectively give your column your front row 10k in a crit, so you have a bunch of 28k columns with crits. Elemuel is kind of hard to set up, though, because it only counts every 3 odd grade units, which means you need a full board of odd grade units. It seems right now that might just be the strategy for the deck, is run all odd grade units to try and get crits, and then if you can get LKL out, you have much, much bigger columns with crits and hopefully just kind of break through. I think Bushiroad's intention with the deck is to kind of use grade switching to kind of toggle each wing on and off during both players' turns to try and get the most advantage out of the utility from black wing skills and the power from white wing skills, but that seems really impractical and probably not going to work the way Bushiroad wants it to. Next up, we have Heartfelt Song Laurel Nerl. So she is the cat girl, and her gimmick revolves around song orders, so the grades 1 and 2 for Laurel Nerl both search out song orders of a corresponding grade when they're rode on top of. And so her gimmick is that you place orders into the order zone, and then Laurel Nerl herself, you can counterblast 1 and sing a song order, so you activate the ability of that order and then turn it face down. And then she has a second skill when she attacks, If your order zone has 2 or more face-down cards, you can choose a face-up song from your order zone and sing it, and your opponent can't call Sentinels. So, already, the Sentinel Restrict makes her very strong, but on top of that, the actual song orders themselves are pretty strong too. So, 6 Flower Fractals, the grade 3 song order, which you cannot search out, unfortunately, but when it's put into the order zone, you can turn up a card in your order zone, so a song that you've sung before can be turned back up if you need 2 orders to be able to sing. But then the bigger thing is that when the song is sung, you can choose the same number of rear guards as face-down cards in your order zone and stand them, and choose one of your vanguards, and it gets power plus 10,000 for each unit that was stood by this effect. So, if you can get your setup where you have 2 songs face down, and then you play fractals, you theoretically have 5 attacks with at least a 33k guard, probably bigger, with a guard restrict, which is a very big offensive pressure turn. So, I think if I math it out, because one of the other song orders gives 5k to your front row, then, you could theoretically have, along with the Persona rides, like 30k rearguard attacks that are restanding, and your vanguard is around 50k with the guard restrict, so big huge pressure, should be able to end the game with that. There's also a grade 1 order that lets you draw a card, so I think the strategy right now is you would sing the drawing order early, and then the triple R for Laurel Narrow lets you draw 2, drop 1, I believe. So combine those 2 together, you're plussing a decent amount. The drop 1, draw 2 also gains 5k power, so you have decent power rear guards. So overall, I think Laurel Narrow looks very strong. I think the ceiling on her offensive matches or possibly even exceeds Bruce's because she has the guard restrict. And then there's also another grade 2 song order that gives your vanguard a crit. So you can choose to kind of forego your rear guard power in favor of giving your vanguard big huge power and a crit. And even if you can't get fractals going to get the multi-attacking, if you just combine the 5k to your front row with the crit gaining order, you still have 3 decently sized column, a crit and guard restrict on your vanguard. So I think at any level, Laurel Narrow has pretty good offensive going. She might be susceptible to early rush, I think, because you need to get to grade 3 to start actually playing your song orders. You might have a tough time building up defenses against an early rush from, say, Magnolia, but other than that, I think Laurel Narrow has very high potential. Next up, we have Rondo of the Dusk Moon Felty Rosa, our vampire ghost girl. So, her gimmick is that when your drive check reveals a ghost normal unit, you call it to an open front row rearguard circle. And then, if you call, you can counterblast 1 to increase its drive by 1 until end of battle. So, her gimmick is that you're gonna drive check a bunch of ghost units, call them to board, and then get more drive checks after that, and a lot of the ghost units have abilities to get themselves off of the board. As far as the grade 2 and 1 for the Felty Rosa ride line, grade 2 lets you put a ghost unit on top of your deck, and then you can add a ghost from drop to hand, and the grade 1 lets you Soul Blast to add a ghost from drop to hand. The grade 1 probably not going to be played because the deck needs Soul for its grade 2 double R unit, which is Soul Blast 2, it gets plus 15k, and at the end of battle you can put it on top of your deck. So, if you combine those 2 cards together, you have a grade 2 Felty Rosa who can put a ghost normal unit on top of your deck, and then the grade 2 double R also puts itself on top of your deck, so that gives you a 5 attack turn 2, if you can manage to open up the spaces in your front row, which you should be able to do because most of the other units that you want to play, your ghost units, all kind of take themselves off the board. So her triple R puts herself to bottom of deck, and then if you play it not from hand, I believe it restands the thing that's in the same column as it, and it gains 5k power. And you countercharge 1. So, you know, the Triple R Grade 3, Caprico of Circulating Starlight Ingrid, 13k, so when it's placed other than from hand, you countercharge 1 and stand something in the same column, and it gets 5k power when it attacks, and you put it on bottom of the deck. Putting it to the bottom is mandatory. So yeah, you have a bunch of cards that can, like, take themselves off the board and open up rearguard circles, and then, you know, Felty Rosa will call new units off of your drive checks, and then you can counterblast for more drive checks so that you can also dig for triggers. I think Felty Rosa is looking like a really strong deck because as long as you get the Grade 2, which is Eleanor, that puts itself on top of the deck, alongside the Grade 2 Felty Rosa, you're basically guaranteed the 5 attack turn unless you somehow could not open up that second front row rearguard circle. And I believe Felty Rosa also has a Grade 1, I don't remember if it's a double R or not, but a Grade 1 that stands itself when something is put into the same column. So yeah, Felty Rosa is looking very strong, very good early rush. Next up is Prismatico Willista. So her gimmick is with the different Precious Stone cards, so they're orders, and like put themselves into Soul after you play them, and then Willista herself will Soul Blast those 2 different order cards. So there's the Ruby order. When you play it, you can counterblast 1, draw 2, discard a card, and then you put it into Soul. So that one's eh. The fact that you have to discard means that in addition to losing the order itself, you're not really plussing to your hand, really. And then if you Soul Blast the Ruby, Willista herself gets 15k and your opponent can't intercept. And then there's Everlasting Sapphire, which is just for free, give something 5k and put it into your Soul. And when you Soul Blast the Sapphire with Willista, you can look at your top 5, call 2, they both get plus 5k, and then you discard the rest. So kind of like Agony and Zorga, but you get 1 extra search compared to that. And I think Zorga is a pretty apt comparison overall, because the Grade 3 Triple R that you get for Willista, when you play the Ruby order, it gets plus 10k, and then you can play an additional order this turn. Increase the number of plays when activated, so I believe if you have 2 of them in your front row, you can just play 2 more orders. And this ability isn't once per turn, so if you keep playing rubies, theoretically you can just keep playing orders over and over. The lower grade Willistas, the grade 1 lets you search out one of your precious stones by putting a card from hand into Soul. And then the grade 2, when you play a precious stone, it draws a card. And then it also has a guard ability for every 2 precious stones in your drop. Gets plus 5k shield, so, you know, could become 10k shield pretty much guaranteed if you use grade 3 Willista skill. Possibly higher the longer the game goes on. Major problem I'm seeing with this right now is the same problem with Zorga, where it's a 3 attack deck. It gains decent power, and you can call like a decent number of rear guards. So you can sort of plus, but not really. I find that it's kind of in that same place as Zorga, where it's like kind of plussing, sort of, but not really. You gain decent amount of power, but right now, as of what we currently know, I don't think the deck has any like guard restricts or criticals, or even just the ability to retire things to be able to actually grind out the opponent. So I think Willista is looking real bad right now. Kind of just a more convoluted version of Zorga, who also isn't doing very well. Kind of between her and Alestiel for which one is worse. I think Alestiel has a higher potential ceiling, but it's harder to actually get there, where Willista is probably more consistent in gaining its power, but then we've already seen where raw power with not a ton of utility gets you with Zorga, so And then finally we have Earnest Correct leader Clarissa, so her whole thing is having a bunch of Earnest Correct rear guards and gaining abilities from hitting, so the grade 1 and 2 both search your top 7 for an Earnest Correct card with equal or lower grade than the corresponding grade of the unit, of the ride line unit. The grade 2 also costs a Soul Blast, and both of them have a continuous skill that gives you 5k if you have no rear guards. Then the grade 3 is when you ride up from the grade 2, you can search out an order, aim to be the strongest idol. And then a second skill is when this unit's attack hits, draw a card, and give one of your earnest correct rear guards 5k. So the order, aim to be the strongest idol, is if you have 5 or more earnest correct units with different names, all of them get 5k, and then if your opponent's vanguard is grade 3, you give your Clarissa the ability to attack 3 units in one battle. So, few problems here. One is just, because your opponent has to be at grade 3 for your order to work, the deck is surprisingly susceptible to early rush. Yes, you can punish it later once both parties are at grade 3, but by then your opponent's kind of gotten more set up, they have their turn going, and they might have been able to, like, harass you or your board and kind of deny you the advantage you might need. And then also needing to have 5 differently named units. You can sort of kinda get there with the lower grade Clarissas being able to search out other earnest correct units, but being so restrictive with the name means you're heavily reliant on the rest of the archetype to do well, and there have already been a few support cards printed that do not have the name, which is really annoying. Another thing you have is a grade 2 8k, which is, when it's placed from hand, if you have Clarissa as Vanguard, you can Counterblast 1, search a grade 2 or less card with earnest correct in its name and reveal it. If you have no rearguards with the same name as that card, call it to an open rearguard circle. So, you know, all of that together guarantees you 3 rearguards, so you just kind of have to find that last one to be able to build your full board to get Clarissa skill active. But being so slow, being that reliant on the order, and then having to hit on top of all of that means deck's probably going to be a little slow, gonna probably have a hard time grinding out the deck. I think if everything goes to plan, it'll be a really good grind deck, and it does have a rear guard that, when you hit, can restand itself, which is pretty important. I think it's Earnest Correct member Katerin, so it's a grade 2 10k, so just when Clarissa hits, you can Counterblast 1, discard a card to stand it. Pretty decent. Deck looks a bit Counterblast heavy for needing to search the order, and then also getting the grade 2 8k and then the restanding card. That's a lot of Counterblast. You know, having all the differently named units can be a bit of a pain to set up, and then just being slow to activate because both players need to be at grade 3. It's kind of a detriment going first for a control deck, which is kind of weird and kind of opens you up to being rushed a little bit. Just, I'm not sure where this deck will end up. It has a pretty good ceiling, but also has a very low floor, so hard for me to say definitively what that one will turn out to be. And that is going to be it for this episode. There are still a decent number of cards left to be revealed, so there's a chance that some of the weaker, in my opinion, archetypes, like Willista in particular, might still get something that can help fix their problems. I'm really, really hoping we get a bouncing rearguard for Kyrie so that that deck just functions better. But, you know, tell me what you guys think's in the comments. Do you like what's going on with Lyrical Monasterio? What do you think the effect on the meta is going to be? Which decks do you think have the best potential? Which ones are you going to play? Leave us a comment. Thank you to our $10 patrons, Darren, Cole, and Josh. If you would like to support the show, $5 gets you a whole-ass bonus show, $10 gives you early access to non-news videos, and you get a shout-out like I did just now. Thank you for watching, everybody. Bye-bye!